Hey guys, welcome to another YouTube video and welcome back to the BD AFL Primetime Wrap for round number 2, where I'll be reviewing the both the Thursday night and Friday night games for round 2. The Thursday night one between Carlton and Geelong, and the Friday night game between Brisbane and Melbourne. So pretty interesting. Those first 2 games. Now I'm recording this, after after all the Saturday games have been, played, and I will be reviewing at least all of them. All of them in the next video. So just going down on that front. So I'm gonna run through the Thursday night match between Carlton and Geelong. Now Carlton went into this game, after the thrilling draw against Richmond in the season opener, while Geelong had just come off of a 4-goal loss to Collingwood on the Friday night after that game. So one went into it with both these guys probably would get undoubtedly will get their first win of the season. And it was a good start. Good start for Carlton, of course. Of course, they were inaccurate early. Of course, kicking 2 goals 6 in that quarter, but because they had 8 scoring shots compared to Geelong's 3 in that first quarter. But because of their inaccuracy, they only led by 5 points at quarter time. Then they kicked 4 goals to 3 in the second quarter. Did the Blues, as they opened up an 8-point margin at halftime, as the Kernos and Mackay and the midfielders really started to assert their dominance. And then the game came to life pretty much in the third quarter. And when I mean the game came to life, I mean Carlton came to life. In the third quarter, they kicked 6 goals to 4. Really good football by the Blues as their midfield started to exert their dominance. As they took as they extended their margin from 8 points at halftime to 23 at 3/4 time. And credit to Geelong, they did sort of come back and came back into the game and try to exert their dominance, obviously, mostly with Jeremy Cameron dominating in the forward line, which we'll get to in a bit. But unfortunately, they fell 8 points short as Carlton won their first game of the season, and now the fixture really does open up really for the Blues. So to the statistics really. In months for the goals kicked for Carlton, of course Charlie Curnow, he was the main man for them, kicking 5. Owies with 3. And then Motlop, Mackay, Fisher, Durden, and the other Curnow in Ed, kicking 1 apiece. For Geelong, unfortunately, Jeremy Cameron kicked pretty much half of one half of Geelong's goals. He kicked 6. Oliver Henry, he kicked 2. That's 4 in 2 games after kicking 2 again. After kicking 2 against Collingwood. And then, of course, Gary Rowan, Tom Hawkins, Close, and Blitzarbs all kicked. kicked the solitary goal. The best for Carlton, of course, not surprisingly, Charlie Curnow with 5, not surprising. Adam Sard here, he played a good game, played a great game for the Blues. Blake Acres, the one thing that stood out for me for Blake Acres while watching that game was, I don't know if because I know I wonder if Michael Voss is playing him as more of a defensive winger, maybe, because there was a lot of times where he went back and took intercept marks. Maybe maybe Vossi has maybe played him in a bit of a defensive type of role on the wing. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, really interesting role from Akers from what I saw. Then of course Ed Curnow, Jacob Wiedering, Kennedy Owies, and Patrick Cripps. The best for Geelong, not surprisingly, was Jeremy Cameron and Isaac Smith. Cam Guthrie, he was probably one of the best players alongside Jeremy Cameron in that last quarter. Of course, he was one of those players. He was probably a player that was trying to get his team back into the game, and they sort of did, but it didn't really come out in the end, really. And then Holmes as well in that. The leading disposal getters on the ground, Sard, surprisingly enough, was the leader for Carlton with 29 touches. Cripps with 27, and then Akers, Ed Curnow, and Matthew Kennedy all had 26 touches. Geelong here, but Geelong, this is the concern for me. So I'm going to read this out quickly. So Guthrie with 25, Cam Guthrie and Jeremy Cameron with 25 touches and 6 goals. That's quite rare, but for some people, not if you're Jeremy Cameron, basically, and then Holmes and Isaac Smith with 23, and then Dangerfield with 22. That is the main concern. If I look back at it from last Friday night, their leading disposal getter on the ground was Dangerfield with 22, and now their leading disposal getters were basically a defender in Cam Guthrie and one of the best key forwards in the game in Jeremy Cameron. That is a big concern for Geelong. I'm starting to wonder. I know this is only early in the season. The season's still young, but I'm starting to think maybe I have overestimated Geelong by tipping them to win win back-to-back flags. I have no idea. Maybe we'll wait until maybe a quarter of the way through the season, then we'll know where they're at. But it's not that. It's not really that. It's not really a good sign for Geelong, where your midfield's not getting much of the ball, and players that are getting much of the ball are basically defenders and forwards. So that is pretty much a concern there. Injuries, you had no injuries to report for Carlton, but there is for Geelong with Reece Stanley. Apparently getting a getting a rib injury during that game. The late change. There was a late change for Carlton before the game with Jack Martin sidelined with a calf injury, who was replaced by ruckman Mark Pittonet. There was no late changes for Geelong in that sense. And for the subs, of course, Lockie O'Brien, he was the sub for them last week against Richmond, and he was again this week. This time he replaced Jack Silvani in the last quarter, while Cooper White played his first AFL game, replacing as this time as a sub, replaced the injured Reece Stanley. Also in the last quarter, the game was played in front of 55,861 at the Mighty G. Some facts to come out of that game. It's the first time that Carlton defeated a reigning premier since round 5 2010. But another fact, in this fact, that team was Geelong, basically, and now they've just done it again. So yeah, that is an important fact to come out of that. This one's a massive fact. The first match featured the past 4 Coleman medalists, which were Jeremy Cameron, Tom Hawkins, Harry Mackay, and Charlie Curnow, for the first time in the AFL era, and the first since round 6, 1902, over 100 years ago. Actually, no, 120, almost 121 years ago. Basically 120 years ago. So yeah, that was the last time that happened. So yeah. And these 2 facts, if you're a Geelong supporter, you do not want to hear. It's Geelong. For the first time gone 0. The last time they were 0-2 before this was 2015. That year they did not make finals. To add to that, the Cats are the first reigning premiers to go 0-2 since Hawthorn in 2009, and they missed finals too. So history, let's just say, is not on their side. And if they are want to go back to back, I think the only side I can remember that has, there has to make history because I think Sydney done this twice in 6 and 2014 where they went 0-2 and made the grand final. I can remember. I think that, or comment down below if there was other teams. I think they've done this, but yeah, I think if they are want to make to make it back to back, they have to make history on becoming the first team to win a premiership after losing their first 2 games. That has not happened. I would assume not happened before in the AFL era. I don't think as well. So a lot of problems there for Geelong, which I will probably highlight more in depth when it comes to the footy wrap up on a Monday. To that. Moving on to Friday nights now. Brisbane and Melbourne at the GABBA. Oh boy, this one was a bit memorable, and I'll explain that in a bit. So, Brisbane got off to a fast start, which was helped a bit by, which I'll explain later, the injury to Big Maxi Gawn. So they kicked 6 goals to 2 in that first quarter, 6-2 to 2-1 to be exact, in that first quarter. Melbourne though closed the gap of I think it was 25 points at quarter time, I believe. 25 points at quarter time to slightly to just 20 at the main break, by kicking 3 goals to the Lions 2, and then just like in a like a reversal, if you like, for Brisbane from their round 1 match against Port Adelaide, they really did turn it on in the third quarter, kicking 5 goals to 2, and turned a 20-point halftime lead into a 38-point lead. It really for them, as Melbourne really did struggle without Max Gawn. And at midway through the final quarter, there were 40 points. It was 40 points to difference. All was going well. The game was fine and dandy, and then bang, the lights went out. And I was like, whoa. And I watched this all as well. I was like, what the heck has just happened? And I was in total shock. I just said the lights went out. And I just didn't know what just happened. And then after, like, I think for me, it felt like that delay pretty much went on forever, but it was only like about half an hour, maybe 35, 40 minutes. And then the game got back on, and then suddenly, Melbourne just turned it on. Just suddenly flicked the switch and like, let's get back into this game. They went from, and then I think at one stage they went within like 10 points or something like that. In the later stages of the game, from being 40 points down. But unfortunately, despite the 6-1 final quarter, it still wasn't enough, as Brisbane recorded a 11-point win to get their first win of this. First win of the season. So to recount, get Melbourne's goals, Brisbane's goals, I should say. Danaher was the led from the front with 4 goals. Zorko with 2. Charlie Cameron with his first 2 goals of the season. Zach Bailey, and then Oscar McInerney, Jared Berry, Lincoln McCarthy, and Will Ashcroft both kicked 1. For Melbourne, Ben Brown kicked 4, and Bailey Fritsch in his first game of the season kicked 3 after missing the previous week's game against the Bulldogs. And then Petrarca, Oliver, Neil Bullen, McDonald, Hunter, and Chandler all kicked 1. The best for the Lions, of course, not surprisingly, is former skipper Dane Zorko. Will Ashcroft not pleading his case for that round 2 Rising Star nomination. Lockie Neal, Harris Andrews, Josh Dunkley, Joe Danaher, and Connor McKenna. While the best for Melbourne were, of course, Clayton Oliver, Jake Lever, Angus Brayshaw, Bailey Fritsch, and Big Ben Brown. The leading disposal getters on the ground for both teams. For Brisbane, Will Ashcroft led on that front with 31 touches. As I said, really hammering a case for the pretty much for the round 2 Rising Star nomination. Lockie Neal with 27. Josh Dunkley with 26, and then Dane Zorko and Hugh McCluggage, both with 22 disposals each. For Melbourne, Clayton Oliver with a lazy 37 touches. Gussie Brayshaw with 27, Petrarca with 24, Lockie Hunter with 22, and Sparrow with 21 touches. The injuries to come out of that game, of course, Jared Berry came off late in the game with a shoulder injury, and it was, from what I heard on commentary from the commentators on that Friday night, apparently Luke Hodge said, obviously because he used to play for Brisbane, and that's why he knows the Brisbane players so well, is apparently he's injured his shoulder is that same shoulder that he had an operation on the off season, and apparently he's injured that again. So we hope we know straight away what that basically entices for him. But the big injury we have to talk about is, of course, Max Gawn, and seemingly basically innocuous accident while in the middle. Had a knock to the knee, and basically was off for the rest of for pretty much all the game after that. There was some poor vision in the rooms of him just just morbid. He just probably knew that he was probably gonna miss. He's now gonna miss games. So I'd assume Melbourne will be without their inspirational skipper for the next few weeks. There was a late change for Melbourne, of course. Stephen May was originally supposed to come in for his first game of the season, but he was out late and was replaced by Adam Tomlinson. For the there was no late change, by the way, for Brisbane. For the subs, Devin Robertson replaced Dane Zorko in the last quarter, just to rest him up, I would assume. And apparently he was subbed out just about a minute or two before the lights went out. And apparently Channel 7 showed a vision of him as the lights went out. And his face said it all. It was kind of funny, his reaction when the lights went out. Really. So while he was getting a massage, by the way, so by the trainers. And then on the other side of things, Jake Melksham replaced Gorney in the first quarter. So they basically they just used their sub in the first quarter, obviously, to replace Max Gawn. The game was played in front of 30,047 people at the GABBA. So facts to come out of this game. It's the first stoppage of a game since round 21, 2021, which also featured Melbourne, which also featured an interstate team, which also was at a match outside of Melbourne, but this time it was against the West Coast Eagles at Optus Stadium, or in that famous game where in 2021 where it was stopped because of lightning on that day, on that night. So that was the last time that a game was stopped, and the last time, and it's the first stoppage of a game because of power outage, I think. From my memory, was that famous round 16 game in 1996, Essendon against St Kilda. I remember that there was, and the commentators were made remarks about that similar day. I mean, JB said, "Oh, remember that game and all that," and then I think Richo came out and said, "I hope they don't set fire to the goalposts." If they did set fire to the goalposts, I would have freaking pissed myself laughing. But they didn't, So Brisbane, they'll enter next week with full of confidence. Obviously, they're gonna burst the Bulldogs on next Thursday night. But in the meantime, for Melbourne, they would have to make do without Max Gawn for probably the next few weeks, I would assume, about that. So that is it basically for this game for this episode of BD AFL Primetime Wrap. Of course, just to refresh the memory there, in the Friday night game, Brisbane won by 11 points, 14-9-93 to Melbourne 13-4-82. And then on the night before, on the Thursday night, Carlton won by 8 points, 13-12-90 to 12-10-82. So like this video, share to anybody who's a Carlton fan or a Brisbane fan. Comment down below what were your thoughts on the events from the power outage on Friday night. Was that the most craziest thing you've ever seen, or was there any other things? Were you there for the other things that I mentioned, like that the game against Melbourne and West Coast when it was stopped because of lightning, or or even way back, we were there when the power went out in the game in 1996. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about it. And one last thing, somewhere, excuse me, down there, somewhere, click on the big red button which is labelled subscribe. But until next time, guys, I'll see you guys later, and wherever you may be, may the sun or the moon shine on your team this week.